The house stood where the forest gave up trying to reclaim the land, stone crouched against mud, timbers warped like old bones, its windows narrow and watchful. Locals called it Grimward, though no one could remember when it had first earned the name. Even in daylight, the place absorbed light rather than reflected it, as if the walls drank hope and exhaled dread. And had lived there for 3 years, though it felt like a lifetime folded in on itself. Each morning began the same way. Cold water drawn from the well, hands numbed until they burned, prayers whispered not to God but to silence. Silence was safer. Silence did not provoke Morwen. Morwen, her husband's mother, ruled Grimward with a discipline harsher than any lord's. She rose before dawn, her footsteps echoing through the halls like a slow drumbeat announcing judgment. She dressed always in black wool, her hair bound tight against her skull, her face sharp and pale as if carved from chalk. Her eyes missed nothing. Not the tremor in Anne's hands. Not the way Anne flinched when Morwen's shadow crossed her path. "You waste time," Morwen would say, voice thin and cutting. "Time is sin." And had learned to move quietly, to breathe shallowly, to make herself small. Her husband, Thomas, had died 2 winters past, claimed by fever within a week of their marriage. And was left behind like an unwanted relic, bound to Morwen by duty and nowhere else to go. The war raged beyond the forest, the wars of the roses tearing England apart, but Grimward felt untouched by banners or kings. Here, only Morwen's law mattered. Yet something else lived in the house. And felt it most at night. When the wind died and the forest stilled, the house seemed to listen. The beams creaked not with age but intention. Floors whispered beneath her feet even when she did not move. Sometimes, lying awake in the narrow bed, and sensed a presence leaning close. Close enough to feel, not see. The candle would flicker violently, though no draught passed. The air would grow thick, heavy with the smell of iron and damp earth. Morwen dismissed such things. "Fear is for the guilty," she said once, when Anne dared speak of the sounds. "And this house punishes guilt." And never asked what Morwen meant by that. The villagers avoided Grimward. When Anne walked the mile to the market once a month, heads bowed, eyes slid away. One woman crossed herself. Another whispered, "Which house?" thinking and could not hear. The name followed Anne home like a stain. That morning, the crows gathered early. They perched along the roofline, dozens of them, black against a sky the color of bruised flesh. Their cries were sharp, frantic, as though warning of something unseen. Anne paused in the yard, clutching the bucket to her chest. Her breath came fast, fogging the air. Morwen stood in the doorway behind her. "Inside," she commanded. The moment Anne crossed the threshold, the crows fell silent. The house swallowed the sound whole. Morwen barred the door with more force than necessary. Her knuckles were white, her jaw set. For the first time since Anne had known her, Morwen looked, unsettled. "Has something happened?" Anne asked before she could stop herself. Morwen's head snapped toward her. The look she gave Anne was not anger. It was calculation. "You will speak when spoken to," Morwen said. Then, more softly, almost to herself, "It has begun." Anne's skin prickled. "What has begun?" Morwen turned away, moving toward the hearth. She knelt with difficulty, her joints stiff, and stirred the ashes though no fire burned. The smell of old smoke rose, choking. "The past does not stay buried," Morwen said. "No matter how deep you dig." That night, the dreams came. And dreamed of the forest bleeding. Trees split open, sap running black and thick. She heard screaming, not human, not animal, but something caught between. She stood before Grimward as it was long ago, its stones clean, its doors wide open. A man stood in the doorway. Armored and blood-soaked, his face hidden by shadow. He spoke her name. And woke gasping, her nightgown soaked with sweat. From somewhere deep within the house came the sound of knocking. Not at the door. From inside the walls. Slow. Deliberate. As if someone, or something, were testing the strength of the stone. And sat frozen, heart pounding so loudly she feared Morwen would hear it. The knocking moved, traveling along the corridor, following the layout of the house with terrible familiarity. It stopped outside Morwen's chamber. Silence. Then Morwen screamed. The sound tore through Grim Ward, raw and unrestrained, a sound Anne had never heard from the iron-willed woman. And forced herself from bed, legs shaking, and opened her door. Morwen stood in the corridor, candle raised, her face drained of color. "There is a man at the gate," Morwen said. And swallowed. "A traveler?" Morwen's eyes flicked toward the shuttered windows. "No," she said. "A ghost returned from war." The knocking resumed, this time, at the front door. And with it came a voice Anne recognized from her dreams. "Morwen," the voice called, calm and cruel. "Let me in." The knocking did not grow louder. That was what terrified Anne most. It remained steady, measured, patient, each strike against the oak door spaced as if counted by a mind that knew exactly how long fear took to ripen. The sound echoed through Grimward's bones, vibrating in places and felt more than heard, her teeth, her ribs, the hollow behind her eyes. Morwen did not move. She stood rigid in the corridor, candle flame trembling in her grasp, wax dripping onto her skin without drawing so much as a flinch. Her face had hardened into something ancient and severe, but beneath it, Anne saw the unmistakable fracture of panic. "Do not answer," Morwen whispered. The whisper itself felt wrong, Morwen never whispered. Her authority had always required volume, certainty. This sounded like pleading. "Who is he?" Anne asked, though every instinct screamed for silence. Morwen's gaze slid to her slowly. In the dim candlelight, her eyes looked too dark, almost hollow. "His name is Yago," she said. "And he died 15 years ago." The knocking stopped. Anne's breath caught painfully in her chest. Outside, the forest had gone unnaturally still. No insects. No wind. Even the crows had vanished, as if the sky itself had recoiled. The silence pressed against the walls, heavy and suffocating. Then the voice came again, closer now, right on the other side of the door. "You have not changed, Morwen," Yago said. Still hiding behind stone and prayer. And clutched her arms, nails biting into skin. The voice was not loud, not threatening. It was intimate. Familiar. As if the speaker knew exactly where Morwen stood, exactly how her heart stuttered in her chest. Morwen took one step back. "Go," she said, her voice shaking despite herself. "You are not welcome here." A soft chuckle drifted through the door. "You welcomed me once." And watched Morwen's mouth tighten, her jaw locking as though she feared the words might escape if she loosened her grip. "That was before," Morwen said. "Before." "Your sins." "My sins?" Yago repeated. The word curved into a smile. "You taught me those." Anne's head spun. She glanced between Morwen and the door, realization blooming like rot. This was not some wandering soldier seeking shelter. This was something rooted deep in Morwen's past, something unfinished. The latch rattled. And jumped back as the door shuttered once, not from force but from deliberate touch. The sound was careful, testing. Like fingers brushing a wound. Morwen raised the candle higher, her voice suddenly sharp. "You will not cross this threshold." There was a pause. Then Yago spoke a single word. "Anne." Anne's blood turned to ice. She had never heard her name spoken like that, slow, weighted, as if he had carried it for years. She had never told anyone outside Grimward her name. Not the villagers. Not the traders. Not even Morwen, who had never bothered to use it. How does he know me? Anne whispered. Morwen did not answer. The door creaked. Not opening, breathing. The wood groaned as if flexing, bending inward, welcoming the pressure. And smelled damp earth and rust, the scent of battlefields left unburied. Her stomach twisted violently. You should not have brought her here, Yago said, his tone suddenly cold. She does not belong to you. Morwen's hand trembled so badly the candle flame flared. She belongs to this house, Morwen snapped. As you once did. A low, amused hum came from the other side. And see how that ended. Anne's vision blurred. The walls seemed closer now, the ceiling lower. The house was shrinking, compressing around them like a clenched fist. A memory, not her own, flickered through Anne's mind. A younger Morwen, hair loose, eyes bright. A man laughing beside her, armor discarded, hands stained with blood not his own. A scream in the night. A body dragged across stone. And staggered, clutching the wall. Morwen, she breathed. What did you do? Morwen turned on her with sudden fury. Silence. But the damage was done. The door burst open. Not violently, inevitably. Cold air rushed in, extinguishing the candle. Darkness swallowed the corridor whole. And screamed as a shape stepped inside, tall and broad-shouldered, boots leaving wet prints on the stone floor. Moonlight spilled through the open door, revealing him. Yago looked exactly as he had in Anne's dream. His armor was cracked and rusted, plates bent inward as if crushed by immense pressure. Dark stains streaked the metal, too old to be fresh, too wet to be dried. His face was pale, unnaturally so, skin stretched tight over sharp bones. His eyes gleamed like polished obsidian, reflecting light without warmth. He smiled at Anne. I told you I would return, he said softly. Morwen fell to her knees. Anne had never seen her kneel. You were supposed to stay buried, Morwen whispered. You swore. Yago stepped forward, the house groaning beneath his weight. With each step, Anne felt a pulse beneath the floor, like a heartbeat awakening after centuries of sleep. I kept my oath, Yago said. I came back for what was taken. His gaze locked onto Anne. And for what was stolen in its place. The door slammed shut behind him. Grimward shuddered, once, deeply, as if sealing itself around them. And realized then that the house had never been a refuge. It had been a prison. And its warden had finally come home. The moment the door slammed shut, the house changed. And felt it instantly, like a living thing tightening its grip. The air grew dense, sour with age and something far older than rot. The walls creaked, not with the settling of stone but with intention, as if Grimward were bracing itself for what had entered. Yago stood motionless in the center of the hall, his presence bending the darkness around him. Moonlight no longer reached the floor. It clung to his armor instead, sliding across the dents and rust as though repelled by everything else. Morwen remained on her knees. And could not remember ever seeing her mother-in-law small. Morwen had always seemed carved from the house itself, unyielding, eternal. Now she looked shriveled, her shoulders hunched inward, hands pressed flat against the stone floor like a penitent awaiting judgment. You should not look at him, Morwen said hoarsely. Do not let him see you. And did not understand why, but her eyes refused to leave Yago. Something in his gaze pulled at her, a pressure behind her temples, urging memories that did not belong to her to surface. Why me? Anne asked, her voice trembling. I've never met you. Yago tilted his head slightly, studying her the way a man might examine a familiar object long misplaced. No, he said. But you live because of me. The words sank into and slowly, like ice through skin. Morwen pushed herself upright with effort, her joints cracking. You have no claim on her, she spat. Your debt was paid in blood. Yago's smile widened, not with joy, but with knowing. Blood fades, he said. The house remembers. At that, the floor beneath Anne's feet vibrated. A low sound rose from deep within Grim Ward, a murmur like distant chanting trapped behind walls too thick to break. Anne clutched the edge of the table to steady herself. What is he talking about? She whispered. Morwen turned away, her face twisting as if carved by pain. You were barren, she said, each word forced. I needed an heir. A continuation. Anne's heart began to race. I don't understand. You were not meant to, Yago said gently. Children born here never are. Anne's stomach lurched. Yago stepped closer. The smell of earth and iron intensified, filling her lungs, choking her breath. She felt suddenly lightheaded, her thoughts blurring as the walls around her seemed to pulse. You were never Thomas's, Yago continued. Not truly. This house chose you. Just as it chose me. And staggered back. That's not possible. Morwen screamed then, not in terror, but rage. You will not poison her mind, she shrieked. You will not undo what was done. Yago turned to her slowly. The temperature dropped sharply. Anne felt it bite into her skin, raising gooseflesh along her arms. Shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls, gathering behind Yago like obedient servants. You sealed me into the foundation, Yago said. His voice was calm, but something ancient stirred beneath it. You fed the house my breath, my bones, my name. And it kept me alive. Dreaming. Waiting. Anne's knees weakened. Sealed into the foundation. She remembered the knocking inside the walls. The breathing floors. The feeling of being watched from beneath her feet. Oh God, Anne whispered. There is no God here, Morwen said sharply. Only survival. And turned on her. You murdered him. Morwen's eyes burned. I sacrificed him. So this land would not starve. So this house would stand. Yago laughed softly. And it did, he said. It stands because it feeds. A sound echoed above them, a dragging noise, like something heavy being pulled across the upper floor. Anne flinched, her pulse roaring in her ears. I hear it at night, Anne said. Something moving. Yes, Yago replied. The others. Anne's mouth went dry. Others? The ones Morwen fed me to keep quiet, he said, his gaze never leaving Morwen's face. Servants. Travelers. Children whose names were never written down. Morwen covered her ears. Shaking her head. Lies. The floorboards above them creaked again, this time closer to the stairs. And backed away, panic surging. There's someone up there. Yago's eyes flicked upward, and for the first time, something like hunger crossed his face. They wake when I do. A low moan drifted down the stairwell. And screamed. The sound echoed endlessly, swallowed and repeated by the house, until it no longer sounded like her own voice. Morwen seized Anne's wrist, her grip bruising. You will not leave, Morwen hissed. Do you hear me? If you leave, it will follow. Yago watched them with open amusement. She belongs to Grim Ward now, he said. As you once told me. The moaning grew louder, closer. And realized then that the house was not haunted. It was hungry. And she had been living inside its throat all along. The moaning reached the foot of the stairs. It dragged itself downward in broken increments, each sound wet and labored, like lungs filling with soil. And pressed both hands over her ears, but the sound did not lessen. It vibrated inside her skull, bypassing flesh entirely. Morwen pulled in close, her breath hot and frantic against Anne's ear. Do not look, she whispered. If you look, it will know you see it. And wanted to obey. She truly did. But her body betrayed her, stiff with terror, eyes fixed helplessly on the dark stairwell. Something moved within the shadows. A shape detached itself from the darkness, wrongly proportioned, its limbs bent at angles that made Anne's vision swim. It descended one step at a time, each movement accompanied by the grinding protest of bones that no longer fit together properly. Its face came into view last. Anne gagged. The thing had once been a boy. That much was clear in the remnants of round cheeks and the curve of a jaw that had not fully matured before death interrupted it. But his eyes were gone, sunken pits filled with writhing blackness, as though the house itself stared out through him. His mouth hung open, jaw unhinged, tongue swollen and cracked like rotting fruit. He stopped at the bottom step. And smiled. And screamed again, her legs finally giving out beneath her. Morwen dragged her backward as the boy's head snapped sharply toward the sound, his neck twisting too far, skin stretching but not tearing. Iago did not move. He watched the creature with quiet reverence, as one might observe a familiar animal. "Good," Iago murmured. "You remember her." The boy lurched forward. Morwen shouted words and did not recognize, old syllables, harsh and spitting, a language that tasted like dust and blood. She traced a symbol in the air with trembling fingers, and for a moment, the boy recoiled, emitting a sound like a sob strangled mid-breath. The walls groaned in response. Cracks split the plaster, thin lines spreading outward like veins beneath skin. And felt something pulse beneath the floor, a deep, resonant throb that matched the rhythm of her own heart. "The house rejects you," Morwen cried at Iago. "It still obeys me." Iago smiled slowly. "Does it?" The floor beneath Morwen's knees sank. Just an inch, but it was enough. Morwen screamed as the stone softened beneath her palms, turning slick, swallowing her fingers as if the house itself were tasting her. And clawed at Morwen's arm, trying to pull her free, but the stone tightened its grip. The boy advanced again, dragging one ruined leg behind him. "Stop!" And shouted, the word tearing from her throat. "Please, stop." Everything froze. The boy halted mid-step. The walls ceased their groaning. Even the pulse beneath the floor stilled, as if listening. Iago turned sharply to Anne. For the first time, his expression changed, not amusement, not hunger, but surprise. "You hear it," he said softly. "You feel it." Anne's chest heaved. "I don't want this." "No one ever does," Iago replied. "At first." The boy slowly retreated, melting back into the shadows at the base of the stairs, his form dissolving into darkness like smoke sucked into stone. The floor beneath Morwen hardened again, releasing her hands. She collapsed forward, sobbing, her authority shattered. And stared at her, realization crashing down with sickening clarity. The house had listened to her. Morwen looked up, eyes wild. "Do not speak again," she whispered. "Do you understand what you are?" And shook her head, tears blurring her vision. "What did you make me?" Iago approached, stopping just close enough that Anne could feel the cold radiating from him. He did not touch her. He didn't need to. "You are the balance," he said. "The house takes, but it must also be bound. Flesh to anchor stone. Breath to bind bone." Anne's stomach twisted violently. "You're saying I was, what, chosen?" Morwen laughed hysterically. "Chosen," she spat. "You were built. And turned on. Her. You used me. I saved you." Morwen shrieked. "You were nothing, another orphan, another mouth to starve. I gave you purpose. By feeding people to a house." And screamed back. Morwen's face collapsed inward, her rage dissolving into something smaller, uglier. "By surviving," she whispered. Iago watched them both, silent. The house grows restless, he said finally. It has waited long enough. The walls responded immediately. A deep rumble rolled through Grimward, dust raining from the ceiling. Somewhere below them, far below, something vast shifted. And clutched her chest as pain exploded behind her ribs. She gasped, falling to her knees as visions assaulted her mind. Bodies dragged through corridors. Blood soaking into soil. Morwen younger, chanting. Yago screaming as stone closed around him, his voice stretched and twisted until it became part of the walls themselves. And screamed, clutching her head. Get out of my mind. Yago knelt before her, his eyes burning. You opened the door when you spoke, he said. Now it knows your voice. The floor split open behind him. A darkness deeper than shadow yawned beneath the stone, exhaling a stench so foul and retched violently. Within it, shapes writhed, hands, faces, mouths frozen in endless screams. The dreadful wakes, Yago whispered. And it wants its due. And realized then, with sickening certainty, that Grimward was not merely a house. It was a womb. And something inside it was ready to be born. The ground did not close. It waited. The opening behind Yago pulsed like a living wound, its edges slick and trembling, stone breathing as though lungs lay hidden beneath centuries of mortar. From its depths came a sound too low to hear properly, felt instead in the marrow, a vibration that made Anne's teeth chatter and her vision blur. Morwen crawled backward on her hands and knees, leaving streaks of blood where the stone had bitten into her flesh. Her eyes never left the opening. It is not ready, she whispered desperately. It cannot be ready. Yago rose slowly, towering over them both. The darkness behind him clung to his silhouette, refusing to let go. It has been ready since the first scream you buried, he said. You simply ran out of ways to silence it. And tried to stand, but her legs buckled. Pain radiated through her chest, a deep internal pressure like something pushing outward from behind her ribs. She gasped, clawing at her gown as if she could tear the sensation free. The house answered. The walls shuddered, exhaling dust and fragments of plaster. From somewhere within the depths of Grimward came a chorus of voices, not speaking, not screaming, but remembering. Each sound carried weight, history, agony. And felt them press against her mind, not attacking but recognizing. She hears us, the voices whispered together. And sobbed, shaking her head. I don't want this. I don't want to hear you. But the house did not care what she wanted. Morwen pushed herself upright, her face twisted with fury and fear. You think you've won, she hissed at Yago. But it will devour you too. Yago regarded her calmly. It already has. He gestured to his own body. I died the moment you sealed me into the foundation, he said. What stands before you is what remains, what the house kept. And stared at him, horror dawning in layers. His movements. Too smooth, too deliberate. The way the shadows obeyed him. The way the house responded to his presence. You're not free, and whispered. You're part of it. Yago smiled sadly. Yes. The opening widened. Something inside shifted forward, its approach announced by a wet, grinding sound, like stone dragged across bone. The smell intensified, decay layered with old incense, blood long absorbed into soil. And retched again, bile burning her throat. From the darkness emerged a shape too large to comprehend at once. A mass of fused forms. Torsos half embedded in stone, faces stretched and warped, mouths sewn shut by calcified growths. Arms protruded at unnatural angles, fingers fused together, twitching weakly. Eyes opened and closed at random across its surface, rolling blindly until one, just one, locked onto Anne. The pressure in her chest exploded. She screamed as something inside her answered. Her heartbeat synchronized with the pulsing mass. Pain lanced through her veins, white-hot and blinding. She collapsed, convulsing as images flooded her mind, births without children, deaths without graves, prayers whispered into stone that answered only with hunger. Morwen screamed, scrambling away. No, no, you promised. The thing surged forward slightly, stone grinding and cracking as Grimward itself strained to accommodate it. A fissure split the ceiling, moonlight slicing down like a blade, illuminating the abomination in full. The dreadful, Iago said reverently. The house made flesh. And clawed at the floor, nails splitting, blood pooling beneath her fingers. Make it stop. Iago knelt beside her, his expression almost gentle. It cannot stop, he said. But it can be guided. He placed a hand over her chest. The pain sharpened instantly, but beneath it, and felt something else, connection. Roots spreading outward from her heart, sinking into the stone, into the walls, into the writhing mass behind her. She felt its hunger. Its loneliness. Its endless, suffocating awareness. And screamed until her voice broke. Morwen staggered to her feet, madness blazing in her eyes. She seized a fallen iron poker, raising it above her head. I will not be replaced, she shrieked. She rushed Anne. The house reacted faster than thought. The floor surged upward, stone flowing like liquid, swallowing Morwen's legs to the waist. She shrieked, thrashing wildly, her blows striking uselessly against the living stone. Anne. Morwen sobbed. Help me. And looked at her, really looked. At the woman who had built this horror brick by brick. Who had fed it lives and called it necessity. Who had turned survival into worship. The voices in the walls whispered eagerly. Let her stay. And shook violently, tears streaming down her face. I never wanted this. Iago's voice was low, steady. Neither did I. Morwen's screams grew higher, more frantic, until the stone sealed her mouth. Her eyes bulged in terror as the house pulled her down, inch by inch, absorbing her into its endless hunger. Silence followed. The mass retreated slightly, satisfied, for now. And lay broken on the floor, sobbing, her body aching with a pain that felt permanent. Iago stood, looking down at her with something like respect. You are its heart now, he said. And hearts do not escape what they sustain. And closed her eyes. Somewhere deep within Grimward, the house sighed. And in that sound, Anne understood the truth. The dreadful had not awakened. It had been awake all along. It had only been waiting for her to accept it. And did not know how long she lay there. Time inside Grimward no longer moved in a straight line. It folded in on itself, stretched thin, then snapped back without warning. Her tears dried on her face, leaving her skin tight and aching. Every breath scraped her lungs as though the air itself had grown sharp. The house was quiet. Not peaceful, never that, but sated. Like a beast resting after feeding. And pushed herself upright slowly. Her body felt wrong. Heavier. Rooted. When she pressed her palm to the floor, she felt a pulse answer her touch, steady and deep. The stone was warm. Alive. She recoiled, heart hammering. No, she whispered. No, no, no. But the whisper did not vanish into emptiness. It traveled. The walls responded with a soft groan, beams tightening, floors flexing subtly beneath her knees. And felt the response not with her ears, but with her chest. With something inside her. She staggered to her feet. Iago stood near the opening, which had begun to close, stone knitting itself together with wet, grinding sounds. The writhing mass beneath retreated deeper, dragging its fused bodies back into darkness like a tide pulling away from shore. It will sleep again, Iago said. For a time. And rounded on him, fury cutting through her terror. You let her die. Yago met her gaze steadily. She fed it for decades. It would never have stopped with her alive. And shook, rage and grief tangling violently inside her. You used me. Yes, Yago said simply. Just as she did. The admission struck harder than denial ever could. And pressed a hand to her chest, where the pain still throbbed, dull and constant. Get it out of me, she said. Whatever you've done, undo it. Yago's expression softened, but his eyes remained dark. I cannot remove what the house has claimed, he said. Nor can you. And stumbled backward until her shoulders hit the wall. The stone felt intimate against her skin, familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. I don't want to be this, she whispered. The house does not care what you want, Yago replied. Only what you are. And laughed then, a thin, broken sound that scraped her throat raw. So this is it. I rot here. I become her. No, Yago said. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You will be worse. And stared at him, breath hitching. She controlled it through fear and starvation, Yago continued. You feel it through connection. Through understanding. The dreadful will grow stronger with you. And felt it then, a flicker of warmth spreading outward from her heart, into the walls, into the ceiling, into the earth beneath Grimward. She sensed the forest beyond the stone, roots winding deep, animals sleeping uneasily, the ground itself aware of her presence. I can feel everything, she whispered. Yes. The realization crushed her. What happens to you? And asked quietly. Yago was silent for a long moment. The shadows around him stirred, uncertain. I remain, he said at last. As I have always remained. The house keeps what feeds it. Anne's vision blurred. You're trapped. So are you. The house shifted suddenly. A violent tremor ran through Grimward, knocking and off balance. Dust poured from the ceiling, and somewhere above them, a door slammed open. A sound followed, footsteps. Human footsteps. Anne's head snapped up. Someone's here. Yago's expression darkened. The house is never quiet for long. Voices drifted in from outside. Men's voices, unfamiliar, roughened by travel. Soldiers. Survivors of war, perhaps seeking shelter from the coming night. And felt the house stir. Hunger rolled through her in a nauseating wave, sharp and insistent. Her mouth watered. Her hands trembled. No, she gasped. I won't. The footsteps grew louder as the front door was tested. A man laughed nervously. Looks abandoned enough. And staggered toward the door, every step a battle. They'll die, she whispered. If they come in, they'll die. The house whispered back. Let them stay. And screamed, clutching her head. Get out of my mind. The door creaked open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of sweat, leather, and fear. 3 men stepped inside, their eyes adjusting to the darkness. Hello, one called. And opened her mouth to warn them. And felt the stone tighten around her lungs. The men smiled uncertainly, mistaking her silence for welcome. Behind her, Grimward breathed in. And then realized with horrifying clarity that the house no longer needed Morwen. It had her. And tried to scream. No sound came. The stone did not choke her, it guided her breath, measured it, controlled it the way a hand controls a puppet's strings. Her lungs expanded and contracted on command, not hers. She stood before the 3 men like a statue carved in flesh, her shadow writhing behind her as if it belonged to something else. Is she ill? One soldier murmured. Another took a step forward. Best not linger. This place feels wrong. The house disagreed. The door slammed shut. The men spun around, weapons half raised, panic flaring instantly. And felt their fear like heat against her skin. The dreadful stirred in response, a deep, satisfied resonance spreading through the walls, through the floor, through her. No, and whispered inside herself. Please. The house answered with hunger. The first man screamed as the floor seized his ankles, stone liquefying just long enough to drag him down. His fingers clawed uselessly at the surface, nails snapping, blood pooling before the stone hardened again, sealing him in mid-scream. The others ran. And watched herself lift a hand. The walls obeyed. The corridor narrowed violently, stone folding inward with bone-crushing force. One man was slammed against the wall so hard his spine snapped with a sound like splitting wood. The last soldier collapsed to his knees, sobbing prayers to a god that had never lived in Grimward. And felt everything. The terror. The pain. The final realization that nothing was coming to save them. Stop, and begged. I'll do anything, just stop. The house hesitated. Just long enough to teach her the cost of mercy. The soldier's mouth opened in a silent plea as the floor rose, swallowing him whole, leaving only a ripple behind, as though he had never existed at all. Silence returned. And fell to her knees, retching, her body convulsing as the echoes of their deaths thundered through her chest. Tears streamed down her face, but even grief felt muted now, filtered through something vast and indifferent. Iago approached slowly. You tried, he said. And looked up at him, her eyes hollow. It didn't listen. Iago knelt beside her. It did. It simply chose itself. And pressed her forehead to the stone, sobbing. I'm not human anymore. No, Iago said softly. You are something older. The house began to change. The cracks in the walls sealed themselves. The air grew warmer, steadier. The oppressive weight eased, not gone, but settled. Grimward was no longer restless. It was complete. And felt roots sink deeper into her, into the foundation, into the earth below. She felt the forest bow inward, animals retreating instinctively. She felt paths shift, roads subtly bending away from the house. Grimward was erasing itself from the world. No more, and whispered. The house replied, not with words, but with certainty. There is always more. And stood. Her reflection stared back at her from a darkened window, and she recoiled. Her eyes were no longer fully her own. Something moved behind them, slow and ancient. Her shadow no longer matched her shape. It stretched too far, split at the edges, touching the walls like probing fingers. Iago watched her with something like sorrow. This is where I end, he said. Anne's heart lurched. What do you mean? The house never needed two anchors, he replied. Only one heart. The stone beneath Iago's feet softened. He did not resist. As the floor claimed him, his expression remained calm, relieved, even. The shadows peeled away from him, pouring into and like smoke drawn into lungs. Remember me, he said quietly. The stone sealed over his mouth. And Iago was gone. And screamed, this time aloud, but Grimward absorbed the sound, smoothing it into silence. Hours passed. Or days. Or nothing at all. Eventually, Anne walked the halls. She touched the walls, and they pulsed in recognition. She descended into the depths she had once feared, now understanding the shape of the darkness, the rhythm of its hunger. The dreadful slept, wrapped around her like a second skeleton. She went to the door. It opened willingly. Outside, the forest waited, but it would never come closer again. And closed the door and barred it from within. Grimward settled. Far away, travelers would speak of a house that appeared where paths ended, where voices called softly in the night, where those who entered were never seen again. They would name it differently over time. The witch house. The breathing stone. The dreadful. And stood at its heart, eyes open, listening. And when the house hungered again, she would decide how loudly it fed.